Well, good evening, everybody, and the loyal listeners of the I Still Call It a Lariat Network. This is another exciting, unpredictable, unscripted episode of Down the Wrestling Rabbit Hole. I am one half of this tandem. I am Howard Meets Sweatz Morgan. And if you want to know how I got that nickname, go all the way back to, I think it's episode 5 of Down the Wrestling Rabbit Hole, and it will explain a whole lot of things. Joining me, as always, is the chick magnet, Mozart Fontaine. Mozart, what's going on, buddy? How are you?
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
So as I understand it, Howard, we talked earlier, and you're having a hell of a time with household
I, I,
appliances and just things going your way.
just it's
Are you
like
gonna make it?
I'm like Ricky Morton. Like everybody is beating me up. Like every time I turn around, something is not going right. And the other night was no exception. I got a nice piece of pumpkin roll and I cut it. I put it on the plate. I poured my milk. I go into the bedroom to enjoy my pumpkin roll. Actually, it was last night because I was going to watch anything but Raw. And I don't even know what I put on TV. I put it on. I cut into the pumpkin roll, and it was delicious. And I took a sip of milk to wash it down, and the milk was sour. And I drink a lot of milk in my house, so I don't know how this milk went sour when it turned on me, but it turned on me. And I'm in my bedroom, right? So I can't spit it back out. Like it's half down my, so I I just got to take one for the team and swallow it. And then I'm trying to drink the water that's in my bedroom. I'm trying to chug that down, just get the taste of the sour milk out of my mouth. And it's just a mess. I can't trust anything.
I'm waiting for the hot tag. I can't do a full
I
extension, but I'm
can't.
waiting for the hot
I can't. I can't do anything.
Poor.
The appliances are against me. Everything in my refrigerator's against me. And I pull out some soup to de-thaw or thaw out for dinner tonight, and it's still kind of sitting in the microwave. I haven't even eaten it yet. And doesn't a little package of frozen roast beef fall out
Oh my
just to
God.
remind me that it's still
You'll be all
hanging
right?
around? I can't make this up. This is not BS. This is the straight, as you would call it in the wrestling business. This is a shoot. This is
It is.
this is the real
Change
deal.
your mindset. I find it when I get in these, and it happens with wrestling too. When you get in a mindset that things aren't good, you bring it into your reality. It's not. Um, I've been in a mindset. I'm going to try this because it's been successful in other areas of my life. Uh, I dig the whole higher consciousness concept. Doing a lot of reading, watching, podcasts and shorts and things like that. That's what I think social media is good for. If you use it right, it can be, and the interwebs, in general, if you use it right, it's a really awesome tool. But if you get sucked down the gambling things, if you have a problem or you get stuck in some people get into the porn stuff, and the kids are being solicited left and right on different platforms, which is pretty evil. But if you use it right, there's some cool stuff out there. And I think that the mindset that I have is, you see something that you don't like, and then it's like you start to assume it into life,
Right.
And I've not watched a wrestling show that I think has been overwhelmingly good in decades.
Well, it's funny you
By and
said that
large.
because as I'm sitting here retelling my milk story, and when producer Steve gets
I say TV. Let me correct myself. I had TV wrestling show. I've
right,
seen
right.
some hell of a shows on the independents.
when
Yeah.
when when producer Steve goes back and edits this and puts all his fancy graphics in there that we can't do because we just don't know how. If you could title this show,
It's above
maybe
my pay grade.
I'm just throwing the idea out there that everything is soured. Like I think the business has gone down.
Yeah.
It's not must see TV anymore.
No.
And I did watch a little bit of Raw when I got home today. Just kind of fast forwarding through some things because I wanted to watch the what the internet, the IWC, the internet wrestling community is calling the greatest wrestling that they've seen in years. And it was
I didn't see that, but that is an absolute farce.
they
I'd love to chat with somebody who wrote that and thinks that
what had happened
it
was,
was.
and I watched it, was, the baby faces are in the ring, the heels come down, and
Okay.
Brock seems like he's kind of running things because he taps Logan Paul on the shoulder, says, "All right, let's go." And Logan Paul charges into the ring, and everybody's supposed to follow him, except they don't. And Logan Paul got kind of fed to the wolves, and which was kind of an interesting twist. I don't know what they're trying to do there, but everything leading up to that is just terrible.
I was dozing in and out. Like it didn't hold my attention. Now that's not to say that in the past when I was watching a show, if it was late and I had worked, like there were times that you doze, it happened.
Right.
So I was unsure whether it was actually the show or not. It's probably a little bit of both. It wasn't holding my attention, so I didn't catch that detail.
I think Carmelo Hayes should have won last night.
I mean, without question.
For two reasons. One,
Yeah.
Gunther should have been counted out.
I mean, that was one of the biggest screw ups. I feel like people look. I'm a worker. I've been in wrestling for over 20 years, 25 years, over 25 now. That's something that I can't overstate the importance of how bad that was, because you're on TV. He was terrible on the floor. Terrible. I don't care who it is. He was terrible. You wait until 9, jump up like you're fine. Because I was looking at that and so confused. It forced the referee to stretch that 9 count out. She should have just counted. But in the big time, I don't know who's accountable for what. I used to know a lot more, but it's all changed.
Right.
Everything's changed. What should have happened is she just should have counted. And too bad, dude, you got counted out. Whatever the plans were for you, just changed now because you messed them up.
Right.
Right. And that's pretty much the way it works on the independent scene. If you screw up in front of a live crowd, again, I'm just speaking for guys that I work for, and the detail that they put into it and the care they put into crafting their product and the trust that they put into us as workers. That was at minimal a reaming. On that level, that's a fine. And maybe get pulled off of TV for a while. Maybe you're not really the ring general. And I think that's a ridiculous title anyway. Like I don't know him as a person, so I say nothing as a person. As a worker, I've never been impressed.
No.
And that's fine. Somebody can say they're not impressed with me. I don't care. I'm looking at it now from, why do fans, by and large, not want to watch the product? When I say fans, I'm talking about I have 12-year-olds that won't touch it. I have a 10-year-old nephew that the only person he knows or cares about is John Cena. And when I question them and ask them why, or maybe I've met a couple of their friends that age, why, their response is, it looks fake. You're damn right, it looks fake.
Right.
So you jump up at 9 and you're all of a sudden okay. Technically, he wasn't in there by the time she should have hit 10. She pulled that so bad. I was like, I don't even know where to go. It's just not acceptable.
And I think
for guys who make that kind of money with those kind of stakes, I don't know or care. Like, well, it looks like they want him to wrestle Cena. I don't. I think it's a terrible matchup. I think it serves the company nothing, because as I said a few times over on VOC Nation, and I think I mentioned here last week, Howard, there is one point of booking, and that's to make money.
To make money. Absolutely.
It's subjective. What's not subjective is to make money. There is zero payoff to a Gunther John Cena match. Not even
and it makes
He's
zero
already
sense.
held the title. They're already claiming him to be this great next coming of Jesus. What's Cena going to do for him? What Cena could do is take Carmelo. I don't care if it would have been Penta, if it's Solo. I don't care who it is. He could take one of these young guys, put young guy X in there. Somebody who's not been around for a lot of years, say maybe on the main, Javon. I mean, why are we not elevating this kid?
Right.
That's what Cena's role is at this point. Now, if he's making a specific request, as we talked about a little bit earlier, hey, I want to wrestle this guy. I understand. It's
Right.
his retirement
But
tour.
but
My
the
gut is he's not making that
I
request
was just
because
going to
he's
ask you
not
that.
a dumb guy.
Do you really think he's
No, I don't
making
think
that?
that.
So
No.
my thing back to the referee. If nothing else in the story makes sense, if the only person that we can believe in should be the official, they have all control of really what happens in that match. You know, they are there to make sure all the rules are adhered to. Right? And I think the one thing that they should be is consistent. Their 3 counts should be whatever it is. If it's 1, 2, 3, if it's 1, 2, 3, it should always be that way. If their count is 1, 2,
Should.
should always be that. Now I
Yeah.
get it. There are some circumstances, and you and I talked offline. Listen, it's not like the early 90s, you know, and Mozart and I are a tag team, and Mozart gets hurt, and I haven't talked to him for, you know, the whole week until we mysteriously bump into each other at the arena, and all of a sudden we have a problem.
Yeah.
No, we talk pretty frequently all week. But
Yeah.
He could have.
And, you know, it's also because you know what they do, too, with that, Howard, because you had mentioned that before, and I was thinking, yeah, that is pretty bad. But then they'll throw in that nuance of, well, you know, Howard wasn't answering my calls all week. But that gets old, too.
Right.
There's only so many times you can run the same exact story. You know, Team X is having a problem, and then, you know, X to the first can't get a hold of X to the second all week.
Right.
They've run that one dry too.
Right.
I mean, it's like they're fresh out of ideas, and everybody. And again, I understand there are so many ideas. There's only what I say. There's only 12 notes in music,
Right.
but yet there are infinite numbers of songs you can put together with those 12 notes.
Right.
Right? There's no excuse to keep rehashing wrestling angles like they do, and they do it so much that even young kids, if they're a fan for 5 years, they'll see the same thing 3 times.
Yeah.
With different people,
and
or even sometimes the same people.
Right. And I think the only thing that could have salvaged that match was if Gunther at 8 is kind of crawling to the ring. At, you know, 9, he's up on the ring, and, you know, he throws, you know, part of his body into the ring, you know, at least half of it, because from how I understand it, that breaks the count, right? That's he's now in the ring, and then
so
he could have
Phantom rules of wrestling,
right?
Yeah,
He could have slid back out because he don't have the energy to get into the ring because he's so weak, because he's, you know, he just took a beating, and now that gets you another 10 count. That I can believe, but this.
There's so many heelish things. Yeah, like you could roll back in and roll back out.
Right.
But technically, you only have to get half you only have to break the plane of the rope, as they say, with half your body.
Right.
So it's one thing as a heel that's a really, really effective weapon to use in terms of crowd psychology. They will get so angry. You just get half your body and you get back out. You take a breather. Now this was a little different situation. He just
popped right up.
Hear the count. He didn't hear the count. And was like, oh shit, I got to get back in. I don't know, but it was really, really bad TV. It really, really, there's I guess a term that a lot of guys use. I've heard it. I guess I've used it myself. Is you really healed out the referee. Like, come on, man. Like the referee just had to sit there and look like a dipshit. Like 9.
Right.
And then was actually ready to count 10. And he was in when she should have already counted 10. She waited until he came in, and then she goes, 10. Oh, never mind.
Yeah. And then she waved it all. Right. So that whole thing didn't.
It was bad.
It was bad.
Oh my God, was it bad?
And even before that, they, Gunther had him kind of wrapped up, and he's dropping these elbows, you know, to the side of his face, and I'm like, that.
I didn't like that. Yeah, it didn't look like he was. Well, he wasn't even hitting.
No,
I don't know what he was supposed to be hitting.
It didn't look
right. Wasn't even close. Yeah,
it looked way off. And
I enjoyed Carmelo so much, and I know somebody's going to say this, and I have a rebuttal to it, but I enjoyed him so much in that match that I became, and I already liked his work, but I got behind him. I could buy into him in that match.
Yeah,
and no, I wasn't worked into that. I was that impressed with his performance.
Yeah. No, I had heard.
I was not following him from an emotional standpoint. I was following him from a technical, you know, have worked with guys, have been trained myself, still trained with different guys. Just watching the nuances that he had, the performance itself was gold, and I think it should earn him a nice pay raise or however they do. I still don't understand why guys who aren't performing, and I go through this all the time. There's a lot of guys. I'm just going to pretty much be blanketed. Like the whole main event scene at WWE is like they're hurt. They're not moving like they normally would. They are uninspired. They are phoning it in.
Yeah.
And I think to sit down and have a conversation with any one of them offline, you'd probably get that consensus because it doesn't look like anybody has any real care about they're not invested in the story that they're telling. I'm sure they love the paycheck,
Right.
but the point is that why are we not looking at renegotiating high dollars and pulling back? You know, and I don't want to hear, oh, because they sold so much merchandise. Completely separate. Don't care.
Right.
You know, you could have I don't follow mainstream sports, but as you talked, if you have a quarterback who sells more jerseys than anybody else, but he's shit in the bed, it's not really going to matter that he's selling more jerseys. He's probably going to get benched, traded, contract renegotiated, whatever they do in those franchises to act accordingly. There's no place for that. That doesn't happen in wrestling.
Right.
Guys just continue to go on and make more and more top dollar, which is okay. But then you have to kind of perform to that level too every night without question.
Do you think that part of the I'll call it lack of interest, because that's how it seems with their in-ring. I'm talking just their in-ring production.
I don't see a lot of passion from any of it. I see a lot of going through the motions and trying to make your spots look right and trying to get your shit in, so to speak. And
is part of it because maybe they have other outside interests going on, whether it be their own podcast or...
No, I think it's the guaranteed contract. I think it's because they know it doesn't matter what they do every week. Why would you... And again, this is where we go back to vintage wrestling, where they were really smart businessmen, but smart athletes too.
Right.
So, for example, that era was a different era. Probably, I'll just cut it off at say, I don't know, 90. I don't know. Guaranteed contracts came around, I guess, somewhere around the late 80s, early 90s, something like that. And then as they got bigger and bigger over the years, I think that why would you? Can't really blame them so much if you can go out, kind of phone it in. There's no repercussion as long as my merch is selling, you know, because there's not a real good measure of viewership anymore. And when those stats are leaked out or given out, they're not good. You've got reports of every streaming upset with WWE, AEW can't sell a pay-per-view, you know.
Right.
It's the numbers keep going down from what I understand. I've looked myself, but anybody who's done research, the numbers aren't knocking anybody out.
Right.
The popularity isn't there. And I know it's so one person will tell you it's a boom period. One person will tell you it's not, which is it? I think it's not. Because of those numbers, because they don't lie. Again, the point of booking isn't to pop the boys in the back, pop the owner, make the guy at Gorilla go like this. It's to make money. It's to sell tickets, merchandise, pay-per-views, PLEs, whatever they want to call them.
Right.
And when you have these guaranteed contracts at high dollars, and they know that there's no repercussions for not phoning it in, if that makes sense. There's no repercussions for phoning it in. And if that's not what's happening, I can tell you it's certainly what it looks like.
Right.
So I can't speak for sure, but I can say it certainly looks that way. Whereas I think that back in the older days before guaranteed contracts, or when they weren't so big and they could easily be pulled, somebody could say, hey, guess what? I know we sign these, but again, contracts can always be renegotiated. Lawyers get involved. There's a loophole. Like, don't ever think that that's really guaranteed.
Right.
Because the second that TKO or whoever doesn't want it to be, it won't be. But there doesn't seem to be any real repercussions for it. Whereas I think back in the day, if you weren't pushing numbers and you weren't filling arenas and you weren't, putting on at least matches that people were raving about on some level. And it is a very small percentage, I think, that's raving about some of the matches. And if you think about it, some of the stuff they rave about is only because the other stuff that they've seen was so incredibly terrible.
Right.
Whether that be the actual performance or just the convoluted story that they're trying to tell. Maybe the wrestler is really great and really that proficient in rare cases where the story is just not, you're just not getting it over. It's not an overly difficult thing to do. It's a fun thing to do, and it takes some thought process, and it's a learning process. But it's not overly difficult to do if you understand the direction. If you sit down with, I think that's the other thing that happens too, Howard. I think that these companies, like my company's gotten so big, there's that term of the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing, and it's absolutely correct. They
Right.
don't. It's compartmentalized. They don't know. They don't care, but it's a real problem.
Right.
Big governments like that, they're so compartmentalized. One department doesn't know what the other's doing, and it's a problem. It's a problem in wrestling too, because if you, as your booker committee, whatever you're using, if you're given a direction, and by the time it trickles down to you as the performer, it's been convoluted. But that upper person who came up with it doesn't know that then you're going to have a shit show at the end of the day. And that's what it looks like to me. Almost everything looks like a shit show and just quick reactions to try to fix something else.
Right.
Like it's, and I think one of the magical things and the cool things about wrestling has always been it can change so much on a whim. Like organic things happen. For example, real injuries happen, so you have to move things in a direction quicker.
Right.
That's okay. That forces a booker and the talent to think creatively and think on their feet. And 9 times out of 10, that comes out better than it would have
Then with the
original
original
plan.
Right.
And that's a real organic thing to follow. That happens. But when you're just fixing mistakes because there's way too many, then you're when you're always putting out fires, like how can you move forward? You know what I mean?
Right. So I did a quick search on guaranteed
That's your thing,
contracts,
man.
and you nailed it. I mean, it's about the mid '90s that
Okay.
real guaranteed contracts came into play, and I'll explain that in a minute. Because prior to that, and I'll just surmise what our other co-host Chat GPT is saying, because it's been pretty reliable for
I
us,
love
right?
that ChatGPT as a co-host now.
So
And we can't really be wrong, right? Because the internet's never wrong.
right, the internet's never wrong. So it mentions guys like Bockwinkel, Hogan, Flair. They had kind of handshake deals, maybe promised title runs and like a minimum or a weekly guarantee, but never like a full year. You're going to make this a year. You're going to make this amount of money for the next 8 weeks or 10 weeks or whatever. But it wasn't guaranteed for the whole year. And then, of course, Hulkamania changes everything in '84, where he doesn't, still not a guaranteed deal, but he gets a percentage of merchandise and part of the pay-per-view revenue. So it's building, right? They said Roddy Piper in the mid '80s had huge payoffs, but again, it's not a guaranteed deal. You got X amount of dollars for WrestleMania 1 and 2 and all that stuff.
Well, when you put his name on something, it was Roddy that was selling it. There's not a star. There's not a one guy, whether it's Brock, Punk, Cody, Reigns. None of them are selling anything. They're the WWE letters,
right?
So they've become interchangeable faces. That's part of the problem too.
Yes, and they won't sell out if Roman Reigns is there, or and I'll say just because I don't want to undermine it, but there was just Ric Flair in a building with a lot of guys you didn't know, except whoever Ric Flair was wrestling, be it Harley Race or whoever it was. You went to see Ric Flair, whether you wanted to see him get his ass kicked or whatever. You went there because Ric Flair, one guy in a card of 7 or 8 matches, was there, and you wanted to see that guy. And of course, he went on last to keep you in the building, and things. So there was a draw there. So you got more money.
And they would put several guys on the show that had a name draw, but you had one or two guys that was usually really tough. I mean, we've heard it for years, like Hulk drew the house, right? Like no matter who he was on, like it was Hogan really drawing the house, whether it was JYD, all these guys had these really stellar reputations for being big draws. Dusty could come in
Right.
But it was always Hogan. It was either Hogan or Flair in the 80s. That was probably
That-
the main two
right.
draws, different companies, but
And then in '94, they call it
94,
the
okay.
Hulk. The Hogan era begins. Um,
Oh, that's when he went to WCW,
he
isn't
goes to
it?
WCW and he gets a multi-year,
Oh,
multi-million-dollar, fully
that's
guaranteed
right.
contract.
Hmm.
And then it says this forced WCW to change the pay structure. Of course, then Randy Savage gets a deal, Lex Luger gets a deal. So all
Yeah.
of these, Hall and Nash get a deal. So all of this starts to build to where we are now,
Hmm.
where it's really, um, you know, most
It's
guys have
excessive, yeah.
a guaranteed contract, and I think it
But I think the difference is though is where what I'm trying to get at is where it started. Let's just call it 94 for argument's sake. They were still expected. They were given that deal based on what they'd already done. Macho was a
right,
huge draw
right,
for many years. Luger was a pretty big draw. Hall and Nash had proven themselves at that point. So when you give somebody that, it's because they've done something to prove that. I don't
right.
know that that's the case now. Like
No,
you're
no,
developing somebody through your performance, maybe really none of the guys well, I guess Cody had a little international experience. Punk did too. But other than those guys, and I could be wrong, there could be others, Brock certainly didn't until he had left and went to Japan. So you didn't have a bunch of guys who were necessarily overly proven outside of the structure of that world. I don't think not like Hulk was or Randy was or
right.
any of those names.
Because I'm sitting here thinking like in '80s through the '90s,
Hmm.
and we'll talk just before the maybe a little bit into the 2000s ish. Um, you know, Hogan, Piper, Savage, Orndorff, of course,
Yeah,
Andre, Flair, Dusty, Magnum, Nikita, the Horsemen, all those guys. There's all of those guys, just singularly, would make me want to come to the building. If Nikita Koloff was wrestling Magnum TA, I'm going. I'm going to that match. If the Rock and Roll
yeah,
Express is on there, against the Midnight Express, I'm going to that show because that's who I want to see. Undertaker, yeah, probably. Stone Cold, yeah, The Rock, yeah, Bret Hart. Now, I don't see anybody drawing me and compelling
it's
me
by design. It
to
it
buy a ticket.
started, in my opinion. It started, in my opinion, probably in the early 2000s when Austin was finishing up his huge run and Rock started to move away. I think somebody somewhere made the decision, whether it was Vince himself or a conglomerate of guys or whatever. But I think it definitely happened in WWF, WWE. Well, by that time, WCW was pretty much probably done anyway. I think that if I'm looking at it from a historical perspective and I try to study it, it was a purposeful thing to over a period, and it took a while. It took a couple of decades to do it, to make the individual talent, which may kind of bleed into why we don't get the passion that we once did out of guys. Number one, a lot of these guys are working a lot more hurt than the general fan would know. Um, they've got miles on their bodies. They're not overly young guys for people who've put in the miles and the time. They're not old, but they're not young in terms of the miles they've put on their body.
Right.
Um, so you see a different work ethic, whether they want to or not, age will creep up. I mean, I know that firsthand. And you've been, I think there was a real concerted effort to make the single star, which is what wrestling has always been built on, is the attraction, the draw. To take away this single or the structured level of a top two or three and make it just about the brand. So if Howard meets Sweatz Morgan is the champion, and from their point of view, doesn't matter because nobody cares. They're just coming to see the three letters on the marquee.
Right.
And I think that if you sit down, if you're a boardroom guy and you don't know wrestling, probably sounds real good. Yeah, man, let's not give them that kind of power. Let's not, these guys are interchangeable. they there's an old saying, and I've seen it many times over the years. Nobody is bigger than the business, really, but it kind of goes hand in hand. As we've talked many times, would the business have been as big as it was without Hulk? Would Hulk have been as big about the business? No, neither one of them would have been. So it went hand in hand. But when you've made the effort to take the draw away from the wrestler and put it focally on the brand, that's good and it's bad. So if you manage it correctly, it's very good, because now when guy X walks or gets hurt or whatever the case is, or is underperforming, well, it doesn't matter. Pull him out, put your other guy in, you
Right,
know?
right,
But at the same time, it's hard to build that brand and make it the brand without consistently good product. And that's where they're failing, is the product overall being wrestling matches, entertainment, is by and large not good. You have some bright spots, you've got some really talented people, you got some super athletic people. But I think it was looked at as more of a business in the vintage times, and that business model could still work. Where it failed was not having TV at that time, when it was pivotal to have a national TV program, hurt a lot of groups. So, I mean, Smoky Mountain fell, to that. Um, some of the regional promotions, which that was probably the last real regional promotion I could think of. I could be wrong. Just one that comes to mind, but I think the historians consider Smoky Mountain the last real regional promotion. But I looked that up when we meet Sweatz. But anyway, so let's use it as an example. They didn't have the national TV coverage. They were kind of piggybacking off of WWF. It worked a little bit, but they just ultimately they couldn't stay open, right? They
right.
couldn't compete. The big time buys their competition, uses their competition, starts bringing in all their guys, hiring their guys. Um, so you don't really have enough. You can't replace a roster of 18, 20 people when they hired 15 of them. I don't know. They hired a lot of them,
They hired a lot of them.
Um, Chris Candido, they had Dr. Tom, they took Jimmy Del Rey for a minute. They even had the Rock and Roll Express in and out. They had, that's where they got Kane from, I believe, when he was Unabomber with Al Snow. I think there were a lot of guys that came through that group that they basically came and said, hey, we want your top talent. Well, can't turn around and replace the top talent. You don't have national TV. What do you think is going to happen? Can't sustain those paychecks on just the house alone. You need
Right.
advertising dollars. You need mainly the advertising dollars, but you need the coverage in case you do want to, maybe tour a little bit, that people know who you are if you're in a different town or whatever. But it's an interesting business. There's not, I don't think, one business model that works, but I think there's a theme that works, and that is kind of have to have a real good counterbalance with your top talent versus what your brand is. You know what I mean? So they should represent your brand, but they shouldn't be bigger than your brand either. So it's just like with Hulk, it's got to go hand in hand, and I think that they took that away. Whereas I watch what the fans would term it as the pops. And I watch them all come out. I watch all the top guys come out, and people. But I'm here to tell you, meat sweats, if you were to go back and find some vintage tape, I'll just use one example. If Kerry Von Erich trying to get to the ring in Texas Stadium, come into the ring to wrestle Ric Flair the NWA World Title, I don't think you'll hear a louder crowd.
No.
I even would rival that with Stone Cold's entrances. I mean, these people were rabidly hot,
Even the
as they
Road
should
Warrior
have
Pop,
been.
as they call it, like I
The
don't
Road
know.
Warrior. There were many guys, but that one stands out to me because I just remember him not being able to get to the ring.
Yeah, yeah.
That's how he just got, like, I mean, the barricades came in on him. Again, that's when somebody is really popular, and that happened a lot across all the wrestling regions, and even right up until people would lose their minds when some of these guys came out in Stone Cold's time, including him himself. But I don't hear that so much now. Sometimes, but it's kind of like trying to tell somebody like you've not seen a rabid crowd until you saw like the Beatles hit them America for the first time. Like it was like people tearing down
Right.
chain link fences. Like it was crazy. Kind of stuff doesn't happen. That's a once in a lifetime, once in a several generation type of like response. But I wish that they would put some emphasis on the star. I wish they would help make guys bigger than they are to bolster the brand. I think there's a way to do it.
Well, and I think you nailed it with with CM Punk and Brock, and because I just while you were talking, I took all of the ages of all of the male participants in Survivor
Mm-hmm.
Series, and I added them all up, and the average age for a
Mm-hmm.
wrestler in that match is 39 years old.
Okay.
And it's not and I'm not saying 39 is terribly old, but and some of it's skewed because you have Braun Breaker in there who's very young, is 28. Logan Paul's only 30, but you have Brock who's
so they pull it way down. They help
right.
to pull it down.
Yeah, and you have Brock that's like 47, but everybody else is in their 40s or better. Brock is 47, Punk's 48. It's time to invest in the new talent, and I think in the 90s and forward, I think WWE did a good job of that in investing in guys like Bret Hart and Stone Cold and these guys that have came up, and and you and I have talked off air. I believe WWE got the worst version of Stone Cold than WCW got, and again, it comes down to marketing and how you booking. But from a pure, I'm not talking about money making or anything like. From a pure wrestling viewpoint, Stunning Steve Austin was far better than Stone Cold Steve Austin. But
he was hurt really bad. That's the thing is when they were some of these guys, by the time they get their cup of tea or cup of coffee in the spotlight, they're so hurt. That wasn't happening in the previous generations because by the time that they were putting Brett on top, he had already been in WWE for 10 years,
right,
if not more.
Right,
and he had already had a career in Calgary and in Japan. It's just that the styles that they were working, and you can go back and watch. This isn't made up. Brett's famous for this. Is making it look like he's just killing somebody.
It's funny. He talked about that on a YouTube clip.
And you're not hurting anybody. You got to work every night.
And it was I don't know if it was one of the Nasty Boys. I don't know if it was Sags or Knobs, but he's like, if you look, he's like, it looks like I'm peppering him with these punches. He's like, and that's how it should look. Excuse me. It should look like it hurts. He's like, but we never hurt each other. But it has to look like it hurt. And we've spoke on this one on this podcast and on our VOC Nation podcast that Logan Paul probably throws the best work punch in the business.
The announcers are flat out saying that now.
In the business.
It's so good that they can't even not tell you that it's that good.
And the fact that you have to say that should be a huge black eye to the business. Really.
It should make everybody else, but you knock him all day long, but he was a boxer.
And I did.
I can tell you firsthand, there's a lot of guys who get into wrestling. I trained a lot of people who've never thrown a real punch.
Wow.
So how do you throw a work punch? That's more prevalent in wrestling than you'll ever imagine. There's even, I wouldn't say competitive wrestlers are that way because competitive wrestlers are usually pretty scrappy and they probably had to throw down at some point, even though maybe they depend on their legit grappling skills. But some of the guys who just say, oh, you know what, I've watched it on TV all my life. I'm a big fan. I'm going to get into it. They've never thrown a punch. And you've got to then train them how to really, in essence, box.
Right.
To be able to throw a punch. And that was a big thing, like back in the day. I mean, I remember we had Glenn Osborne as a guest on the VOC Nation. He talked about that was one of the things that you kind of got to earn was once you worked your way through wrestling school or through training, however you did it, whether it was a school or you were kind of on the job training, eventually they would take you, and the old timers would say, hey, here's how you throw a punch. Here's how you do it tradecraft, and you're not killing somebody, but my God, it looks like you are. And I think that craftsmanship has cost a lot of guys careers. They've made more money maybe quicker than some of the older guys, the previous generations, but their careers were a lot shorter because they ended up quote unquote strong styling each other, which is also an art to that too.
Right.
So that's not necessarily breaking somebody's jaw either. The what I found out, which is interesting because I'd never worked in Japan, but I got some friends that have been there, that there's very calculated ways in which best way I can explain it is I think everybody's familiar with William Regal saying we hit hard in very safe places. That's
Right.
what they do. Now it did become a one-upsman thing, and one guy's going to drop somebody on their head, so the next guy has to but if you go back and you watch some of the greats deliver some throws, Eddie Guerrero had a beautiful, kind of side suplex where, instead of dropping a guy on his head, he was able to safely at the last minute twist him around so they take a nice flat bump. It's a brutal looking maneuver, but it's having taken that, it's within reason for the body to be able to take that.
Right.
Okay, cool. Okay, I felt that, but we're alive. I'm not knocked out. I didn't get a concussion from it or whatever the case may be. And that's when you took a guy like Brett, who had worked all those years to hone his craft. So by the time they were putting him in the ring, when Hogan had left and they needed the next guy, and they're trying to groom somebody, the quality of his craftsmanship in wrestling was so good, and he understood psychology, and he could make anybody look really good, and he did. You would have. You had a departure from, oh, we didn't try to replace Hulk. Here's our Hulk replacement. I think maybe they tried briefly with Luger, but because he had a look and he was built.
Right.
But I mean, I'm a fan of Lex Luger, but I never thought that he fit in well in WWF. I thought he was I thought his work was better. Again, by the time he got to WWF too, he was injured. He had a he had a plate in his arm or whatever it was, or whatever the gimmick was. I don't know. But he was definitely injured, like legitimately just from taking bumps and things. Not in his greatest form, right?
Right. Right.
And then years after that, as he got back on par, he looked like the guy again. But not that he didn't physically, but just the way he was moving in those WWF years, like he was, you could tell that there was some things he was working through. But you get a guy like Brett, and and Sean was coming up. He had been working at that level for over 10 years at that point in the early mid 90s. So you had guys with some experience that could really work with a lot of different type of talent, But
Right.
what we've taken away too is the ability to do that. Sean had worked Texas, Mid-South, Minneapolis under Vern. Brett was working Calgary and Japan and all over the world. I mean, honestly, I think he had done Australia. I mean, God, he did so much. I'm not sure, but he was all over the world. So you had different styles, different mentors who are all good mentors to these guys. What you do now is you take that away and you put them in one. This happened a lot. This happens a lot too, Howard, with wrestling schools. Sometimes you can look at a group of students and be like, they came out of school X because they do everything exactly the same way. And doesn't mean it's not a good school. It's just sometimes they're turning and burning, and they just want to get students through the door, keep the doors open, get to tuition.
Right.
Hopefully they find a couple of stars, out of a bunch of candidates. But a lot of times they won't foster differences between the guys. And I'd learned that early on training, which was probably one of the hardest aspects of trying to train different people. Is I had 3 or 4 guys that wrestled exactly the same. You could put a mask on them and cover up their bodies. You probably wouldn't know it was somebody different.
Right.
That's how because I was in his mindset of, oh, you got to do it this way. Oh, you got to get up this way. Oh, you got to do it this way. Yeah, there's rights and wrongs, but then there's these nuances that I think that a really good trainer is, which is why you got such diversity. You know, Barry Windham working under Harley Race's wing, but he didn't look like Harley because he wasn't. You know, Harley probably wasn't stopping. Oh no, do it just like me. You
Right,
know,
right.
um, there were hallmarks. Like if you ever watch the guys that came out of Vern's camp because they were working with Billy Robinson or they were working with Sheik. Yeah, and he had some other guys up there training too. I can't think of off the top of my head. I'm probably, why am I not? But anyway, they can all hip toss. They can all arm drag. So all these basic things, they do it like it. I mean, just so smooth like butter. Like boom, boom. It doesn't look rehearsed. It doesn't look fake. It's kind of based off shoot versions of stuff, but just enough to so the guy can control himself and you can control what's going on. Really, really excellent stuff. So there'll be hallmarks of different schools, but as we started to, as the wrestling school became popular too, we started turning out as an art form students that looked a lot alike. So what I started to do, because I had a small audience of and a lot of kids that wanted to get on the show, is not only did the promoter, the owner JJ and his wife Lisa uh, have to creatively make them different, they asked me to make them different in the ring.
Okay.
What is he doing now? It was a amalgamation of what does he do naturally well or she do naturally well, and what would this persona do, right? Because Barry Darso as the Repo Man acted very differently than when he was in his Crusher Khrushchev gimmick. But Barry had certain things that he did that were just Barry, really good. Then when he was, which Demolition was he? I always mix them up. I think he was Smash.
Smash, I think.
Wasn't Superstar was Axe, right?
Yes.
Yeah. But you could always tell that it was Barry. But those three incarnations of Barry were very different because he was that talented. And that's what we wanted these kids to be, is if we have to switch you tomorrow, you roll from babyface to heel or heel to babyface, you still have to be able to differentiate those two roles, but you don't necessarily change who you are. Like Barry didn't hip toss different. He didn't punch different. His mannerisms were different.
Right.
But on the same side of that is I didn't want 5 or 6 Barrys. I wanted an individual everybody who could be as diverse as Barry was in those roles that he played. And it's not easy. It's challenging, but it's fun. It's more fun than trying to say, all right, guys, today we're going to drill hip tosses. All right, today everybody's lining up for body slams. It's a back body drop day. Hope you guys didn't eat lunch,
Right.
That has to happen to some degree. But I wonder, well, my long-winded point is I wonder if we've not lost that ability to culminate different types of personalities. I watched the NXT kids and they got some personalities and they have some talent. So I'm hoping that, but it always blows me away because I've seen that in the past. But then it seems like they hit the main roster and something stalls. I don't know what it is. The booking,
Right.
I don't know.
And I'm glad you brought up Barry Windham, because I sent you that clip. I don't know if it was yesterday or today or whenever it was.
Well, I was talking about Barry Darso too. So Barry
sorry,
Darso
I'm going back to Barry Windham
but Barry Windham.
I want to
yeah.
I want to talk about
He
I
was one of my
think
favorites, though, Howard.
what's missing today is the ring psychology that these older wrestlers that we followed had, and it was April something, April of '88, I think it was. It was a tag team match with him and Luger, who I thought was a great tag team. How can you not like Barry Windham and Lex Luger together? They're wrestling against the Horsemen. I think it's Arn and Tully at the time. And
I remember that.
in the weeks leading up to that, they're J.J. Dillon is planting a seed that Luger
Yeah.
is bad news. Barry, you need to dump him. He's only going to drag it, and they're just. It's not constant. It's just a smart remark here or an off comment on another promo, or just in general how you can't trust a guy like Lex Luger. Maybe not necessarily saying you can't trust Lex Luger, but you can't trust a guy like him. And there comes a point in the match. Luger is knocked out of the ring, and he's dazed. He's on the floor selling. Barry's getting his ass handed to him. He's starting to make a comeback, and he finally he breaks free, and he goes back to reach for Luger, and Luger's not there. And right on cue, there's J.J. Dillon in their corner saying, "See, I told you he wasn't going to be here for you." Blah 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 blah. So, and you see Luger, with all he's got, with all his strength that he can muster, he climbs up to the ring ropes, and Barry finally tags him, and the crowd goes nuts. And then what I thought is always underestimated in this heel turn that Barry's about to do is Barry picks Luger up, dead weight and everything, and body slams him into the ring, picks him up over the top rope. And if you don't think that's impressive, try to just pick up a human being on your own without having to lift them over the top rope. And he turns on Luger, and instantly the crowd goes crazy. And I told you this, in the text, that worked because it instantly got compassion for Luger. Barry's making a mistake, man. You didn't see what 30,000 other people saw. Luger, he didn't turn his back. He just wasn't there because of this. But Barry's not hearing it. Barry's going to continue to do what he does. And then he comes out the next week, and now he unloads on Luger. He's been dead weight. He's been an anchor. He's been this. And I'm like, that's just classic one psychology and long-term storytelling 101, because that stretched on for weeks. That turn it didn't just happen, and it happened over probably a month and a half, maybe 2 months. I don't think it was longer than that. And it just
you didn't know if it was going to happen or not.
Right.
Like, it wasn't obvious, and I think that's a cool thing,
Right. And it was great. And like you said, Barry wasn't Harley Race, although he's trained by Harley Race. Just like Ric Flair wasn't Vern Gagne, although he's trained by Vern Gagne. There's a lot of guys like that, and I think and I don't want to sound like I'm
I wonder
really
how much he was
bashing.
actually really trained by Vern, though. I think Rick has said a lot. I think he wasn't doing a lot of in-ring work with Vern. I think Vern was like probably more calisthenics and things like that.
Okay.
His initial run with Vern, I think he kind of got stretched a little bit and wanted to leave, and Vern came back to his house, and the story, he came back and was like, "You're not quitting." So I think there is something to be said for Vern. It was responsible, but I don't know how much one-on-one he really got from him. I think Vern had. I don't know. That's a question I'm posing to you. I can't remember. I think that it's been. I know Flair's done interviews talking about like Sheik and Billy Robinson working with him, and but yeah, that'd be interesting to find out, because Vern himself, to me, wasn't an overly exciting wrestler.
He wasn't.
Technically
Very technical. I mean, he's an Olympian, right? I think he was in the Olympics.
I didn't see him. When I'm watching old footage of him and like his contemporaries, like I didn't find him as exciting as Billy Robinson. I thought Billy had a bit of a dynamic persona, the big ring jackets, and he'd do the cartwheels and the cool like arm reversals and stuff like that. He's real technical, like the British, the UK kind of British style. He wasn't. He didn't, to me, have the presence of Lou, of Thez. He didn't have the presence of some of the contemporaries at the time that were like shooters. I think that he very, very instrumental in a lot of without him, like, would we have Flair? Would we have Steamboat? A lot of guys came out of there, of that camp.
No, absolutely. And I don't want to sound like we're dumping on the main product, but there's a huge problem with what is considered mainstream pro wrestling today, and a lot of it is just like Mozart. You said. I think persona wise, there's no difference really. Between CM Punk and Cody Rhodes. Like there's not a clear distinction. They and I say that with how they deliver their promos. Punk may be a little bit better at delivering promos, and I can't. I'm saying that about him over Cody Rhodes, being who Cody's father was. But I'm having a hard time buying into Cody Rhodes being the face of the company. And I'm not even saying that CM Punk should be the face of the company, but if I had to choose between the two, I think CM Punk would be my guy. I think he's got, to me, again, I'm 50. I'm a 54-year-old fan. I think he's got more mass appeal than Cody Rhodes does.
I mean, he's got a real grassroots following, though. That's what's interesting. And Cody's got a good following, too, but I think it's not as grassroots as Punk's has been over the years. I think he's really, really been brilliant in terms of getting his own marketing. You know what I mean? He's really been. I think I give him more credit as a marketing genius than necessarily like a great technical wrestler. I think his wrestling gets him by. I think he's really hurt. I think he looks like he's moving a little slower. I think he's probably feeling some aches and pains. I mean, how can you not with that many years? And even though he had an extended break, I mean, who knows? Like, I don't know. Was he training? Was he working? The mats? Was he doing martial arts? Because that'll take its toll too. But certainly not like bumping in wrestling. But I think he's just been more grassroots and very organic. Like he probably gets one of the bigger reactions, and he gets one of the bigger pops and reactions because it's sustainable. It kind of goes on. Now again, I'm unfamiliar with some of these newer fads, and I'm starting to kind of learn them. Like where they sing the person's name after they come into the ring. I'm like, I don't know if I consider that as much of an organic pop as I do when, say, they just keep singing Punk's entrance song. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's more organic to me than them just singing the chant of the person's name because it's something that they feel like they're supposed to do. Not a genuine, oh my God, here's this guy coming to the ring. I'm going to lose my crap. Because I feel like too many times, like when I hear somebody's music hit, it's almost like no reaction. And I feel bad for the people coming out. I'm like, okay, well, where's the reaction? Like there was nothing there,
Right. Yeah.
And it's not those guys, but I just mean in general, just take anybody on the card. Like a lot of times it's like, it feels like the crowd's already tired. It feels like they're like, oh, and it's like, 25 minutes into a show or half hour in or something,
Right.
But it's tough for me to watch because I'm watching it more now from a training perspective. Like, how are they performing? How are they doing the moves? What are they doing? Where are they at in the ring? And I've seen so much that 10 years ago wouldn't be accepted. That would literally get them walked out of WWE if they were doing that then. So it kind of sometimes makes me wonder, like, where are the standards at? Like, why is this okay? And it's stuff I'm not willing to give away because it's kind of like tradecraft stuff. But it's like I've had these conversations with peers, and the best we come up with is, well, they don't have the reps. Yeah, but neither do we. And we go out and do an independent show every couple of months, and man, it's our pride and joy. We're making sure we're on point. Like we know what to do, where to do, but we weren't necessarily in a ring for 4 or 5 weeks leading up to the match either. It's just we muscle memory, like we know where to be, what to do.
Right.
So I don't really know what the real answer is. I think it's probably part of it, but it's not all of it because you could take guys. I've seen it on the independent scene a lot. I've seen it on TV over the years where they pair somebody up for the first time, second time, third time, and the match is just stellar. And then there are guys that have wrestled each other ad nauseum over and over again who should be able to do it in their sleep, and they just can't put on a good match together, So I have questions about some of the matchups, some of the pairings, what's expected. Like, I just don't know. Like, that's a fascinating thing to me because I watch it and I'm like, some things that should be obvious, like even in terms of storytelling, are like not. And then there's things that like I said, man, some of the stuff I really, really like. Like I'm like, whoa, that was pretty cool. But then
Right, yeah,
I watch something. I don't know, to go out. I'm not a big fan of the way they market stuff now. Like we talked about, like you're in an era where everybody's the greatest of all time. Everybody's had the title for 1,447 days and 25 minutes and 47 seconds. Like it's that era of they got to tell you exactly how long somebody held something, how many times they held something, and you know what's funny to me too. And again, I just implore anybody to do like history, and that means read, find magazines, watch old footage, watch entire catalogs of promotions. I mean, if you have 87 of these apps, it's on one of them.
you're right, yeah.
Um, when you watch when somebody is, I heard them introduce Charlotte Flair last night, 14-time champion. She's too young to be I mean, it's not. How do you have it 14 times already?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like.
Hmm.
Flair's accepted number. Her dad, the legend, is 16. It's not. It's way more than that. I think
It's
we
right
we
around
researched like
23,
20.
24
I
ish.
think it's 23 or
Around
24. Yeah.
it.
Um, and that's based on for some of the younger fans. The way the NWA didn't always acknowledge title changes when things happened a little bit outside of their control. Sometimes titles were dropped for safety reasons of Rick
Right,
himself. Sometimes decisions were just made that they didn't really want to recognize. WCW and NWA were having a dispute over which title was which and how many. That was a very confusing time. That I've tried
yeah,
to unravel that history, and that's a really hard era to unravel.
yeah. Yeah, once you get into that NWA, WCW area, it really
Yeah.
muddies the waters,
Well, it was like
way
one week
more.
they were NWA, and then one week they were WCW. Then they had an NWA and a WCW championship, and then I think at one point they were unified. Then there was an international world champion because NWA completely or WCW completely pulled out of the National Wrestling Alliance, so they couldn't use the brand name anymore. I don't know. It was very, very confusing. Um, but anyway, he gets a lot of those title reigns came out of that kind of mess. So okay, they accept 16. But he was
Yeah,
also probably well into his 40s, which is still prime if you wrestle in a smart manner, which for a lot of years he did, um, and stayed fairly healthy. You there's a 14 times already. What is she, like, maybe 30? I don't know. I mean, it's
no,
like, how do
I
you
think she's a
already,
little, she might be
like,
closer to 40. Hold on.
is she really? Oh, I didn't. But even still, like, you got all these young people with these multiple
30,
multiple
she's
title
39.
runs.
She's
She's
39.
39. That's still
Yeah.
young for.
It's still
I
very,
don't
yeah.
know, man. It's yeah. Because by the
So,
time the career is all said and done, what's it going to be like? 47. My point is that just like this is another. We're on the rabbit hole, guys. Steve, producer Steve, here we go. Way too many titles in wrestling, but there's also too many title reigns in wrestling. It's not special anymore when everybody has 15, 20 title rounds.
right.
It's just not. It's not special when every 5 seconds somebody breaks a record.
Yeah.
It's and this is some of it's controllable. So when you talk about booking and you have control over the booking, like to make somebody a champion that many times, and Flair said it himself like this, and somebody else recently just said this, but they lost it that many times too.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to acknowledge that. But when you
Right.
have, and again, it's ice cream. What do you prefer, a long title reign versus the number of title reigns? There is no right answer. It's just what you prefer and what fits the booking, right? But for legacy, I think they hold the same weight. I mean, if you've been a 16-time champion versus a 13-year, 14-year champion, like, okay, cool. Like, yeah, somebody saw fit and you were drawing money for 14 years, 13 years. That was at Bruno's reign. I think he held it 13, but 11 straight. I'm probably wrong, but look that up for me, Howard, please.
What's that? What do
The
you want
only
me to look
reason I
up?
say Howard, Bruno's run was 11 years, right? And then he was he was champ for a total of like 13, if I'm correct. But there was a break in there. So it wasn't 13 straight, right? But anyway, my point is you, and the only reason, fans, I say Howard is because I'm on a phone, and if I leave, I'll leave the conversation. But Howard's working off of some better,
So yeah,
some more.
let's
But
see.
it's interesting because that's a good point of contention. That's a really good debate among fans. But I don't think I think it's a waste of time to start saying, because nobody can keep track of it anymore when everybody's a 20-time champion, a 25-time champion. And hell, I've even seen runs where they're putting adding every title they up and say, oh, he's a 40-some-time champion. No shit. Like, if you go back in wrestling history, a lot of guys held shit tons of titles because they traveled. There were different title belts, different versions. So I don't know how much weight I'd really put on that kind of stuff. When it's one particular title, like even, well, again, Flair's titles, because that included his WWF title run too, or title runs. I think he had more than one. I can't remember. So if you're counting multiple promotions, that's cool too. Yeah, I get that.
Right.
But everybody shouldn't be a 14, 15, 16, 17-time champion, 20-time champion. It doesn't make you special anymore. It's like
He
having 5 Andre the Giants on your show. Like, what's special about?
right.
Anyway,
So he
what was
held
it,
it
Howard?
from he held it from May 17th of
You
63.
froze.
Can you hear me? Am I good?
I hear you now. Yeah,
All
there
right.
you go.
So he originally held it from May 17th, 1963 to January 18th, 1971. So about 8 years, 7.5
8,
years.
okay.
And then he
All
held
right,
it
I was wrong.
for 4 more years. Well, a little less. December 10th, 1973 to April 30th, 1977.
So almost 13 years, and it was an
Almost
8-year run.
12,
Okay, I
13
was
years,
wrong.
yeah.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
again, we have to look at, and it would take some digging, but I'm sure he defended that title more than once every other month when Bruno was champion. He was
Well,
probably
yeah,
wrestling
because they
every week.
didn't they go to MSG like once a month?
Yeah,
So they did the
right.
whole loop. Like he was defending several times a month. Probably 5 or 6 at least. I mean, because he had a record he might still. I think he had a record for the most sellouts at the Garden for a number of years too.
Yes, he did. Yes.
So, and that was a time when it was Bruno drawing. It wasn't the
Right.
Worldwide Wrestling Federation. That was Bruno Sammartino.
Right.
Which I can understand. You put a lot of trust in your guy. I think if you got the right guy and you got somebody with integrity, you're fine. Like in those days, a handshake, like Harley wasn't going to walk out on the NWA and screw over their title. Bruno wasn't going to walk away with the WWF title, so he was the guy. That's why he was trusted with it,
Right.
And not to mention he made a lot of people a lot of money,
Yep.
I get the evolution of stuff in everything, movies, music. I don't necessarily like some of it, but what I can't understand is why you leave money on the table. And that's where I'm going with a lot of what I see on TV. Like there's a lot of money left on the table. Like we talk about this ad nauseum, how many apps are people going to be asked to buy before they say, no, I'm done?
Right.
How many, wacky hours are they going to have to get up and watch the pay-per-view or PLE event that they want to see? I don't know that I would keep doing that. Some people might, and that's okay. But again, is the vast majority going to do that before you start losing the viewership, which leads to no sponsors, which leads to said app? Oh, guess what? Our deal is now null and void.
Right.
You have no TV anymore. What are you going to do? Where are you going to outlet? And I think there were a couple of scary times for WWE with USA Network where that got to a point where, are they going to get renewed? Where are they going to run?
Yeah, there was, even when I was watching it on USA, there was questions of, are they, and it seemed like every year for a lot of years, They were like,
Hmm.
oh, are they going to re-sign Raw? Are they going to, this, that, the other thing?
Yeah,
It was, I don't want to say dark, like, because it wasn't going to doom them, but losing USA Network and not having another network to go to would have been hugely detrimental to their
yeah.
growth.
Well,
Hugely.
look at what's happened with TNA. Like they have a small deal, but most of their I forget what channel they're on because I don't even get it. Like I see it on my cable lineup, um, but I can't. I have to order the channel special, and I'd love to watch TNA, but I'm not going to order the channel just for that.
Yeah,
You
I'm,
know what
I'm
I
not. I'm
mean?
not ordering an app just specifically for. I
And
have enough apps that I have to keep track of.
yeah, well, this is actually this particular one is a channel. I can't remember what it is because I've seen it on like the regular cable channel, the cable lineup, but I don't. So, oh, let me watch TNA. Oh, I don't get that. I'm not going to order it. Um, they, they're most of their exposure is coming through NXT now. So when you lose a major TV deal, it's detrimental. When you're a bigger company like that, you know,
Right. Okay.
grassroots stuff. I think but since we rolled down a lot of rabbit holes here, you know why do you think it is that some of the young guys that we talk about, we like as fans, and even seems like when you talk to some of the fans, when I get out there a few times, I get to talk to people at wrestling shows. It's pretty much the same guys that they like. It's the Carmelo. It's Javon's got a lot of Javon Evans has a lot of buzz. Uh, I know for me, it's because of I like the personas that they have, but I like the work that they're doing in the ring. Why do you think that they're not giving the ball to run a little sooner? Because I feel
I
like,
I I, I think they're. I think WWFE, whatever they're called this time. I think they're too hung up on the stars that we've made. Like we've made Cody Rhodes, we've made Roman Reigns, we've made the Usos. We brought back CM Punk. Brock Lesnar. We know that these guys used to draw
mhm,
money, and we're
yeah,
gonna hope and pray to all the little baby Jesus wrestlers out there that they're going to draw money again, and try to catch lightning in a bottle. But the problem is you try to catch it over and over and over and over again to the point to where it's bland and it's boring.
yeah,
I don't want to see. If Cody Rhodes and CM Punk never ever wrestled each other again in their careers, I couldn't be
hmm,
happier. You know, I don't know how much more of the Jay and Jimmy Uso, you know, brothers thing they're going to milk. And listen, no disrespect to the Usos, and their talent, but I hope they never hold tag team gold again in the WWE. I don't want to see that. I want to see, you know, the Motor City Machine Guns, DIY, these other teams. So it's at Faxium, um, you know,
hmm,
hold the gold for a little while and bring up these I'll call them mid card tag teams because they weren't mid card somewhere else when you signed them. They were top tier talent, top tier tag teams, and
yeah,
from where they came from. So I don't. Maybe it's because they're not WWE guys that they came from somewhere else.
hmm,
And then how would it look? If they come here and they run roughshod over WWE and then and go back to wherever they came from and be like, we look, they're not, they're weaker than we are, so I think WWE has a real problem putting over other promotions talent. And that's whether they come in and sign contracts or
hmm,
this crossover with TNA. I hope it works for TNA. I hope they start putting TNA people over. Although, from what I understand, a lot of the NXT champions are former TNA people, which I think is
hmm,
great. But it's still the NXT show. That's your developmental place. Like, bring these TNA people over, into the main roster. I can. because we
Well,
can get
Frankie's
behind them.
been there before. I mean, Frankie
Yeah,
was tag champs in WWE. He's a, you know, and I think mid card too is just there can be a lot of mid card talent. I don't think there's any such thing anymore in today's uh, the way that wrestling is situated on a show as openers, because you can take a really hot main event guy and make him your opener. I think when I speak mid card, I mean it just because the people who aren't in the actual heavyweight title picture. So I think that
right.
I think you're right. But we, you know, as producer Steve has talked before too, there's a lot of money at stake. There's some people
Yes,
higher above WWE and TKO that are afraid to give these lesser paid guys a shot at the top. But again, that's the pay structure that's causing that. That needs to be
yes, it
fixed.
is.
Or somebody just needs to take a shot and say, okay, I know I'm paying somebody X amount. That's a lot of money, but they can also benefit me lower down the card. They can also open a show for me for 6 or 7 months, get people's eyes on the product. Then when we see the younger kids and the newer guys that are maybe a little more healthy and a little more innovative and have a different persona. I think that there's still a way to do it without taking anybody's money, because I wouldn't want anybody taking my money either. Um,
Right.
but they have to be
And I
more
think a lot
open
of
to
it
switching
is
around the slots.
right. And I think a lot of it is, and no disrespect to Carmelo Hayes, who, like you said, I thought had a phenomenal showing against Gunther.
Yeah,
You know,
he typically
I,
does do a good job. Yeah.
but I don't, speaking, and I'm trying to look at it through the lens of TKO and Triple H. I don't think they have enough of the cojones to say, let's make him the face of the company, because he's not proven yet. But again, it comes back to how you book him. If you book him the right way, he's your next superstar. So take a chance. And listen, it's and maybe I'm way off because I'm just a fan. But if I tell you, hey man, this is how I'm going to book you, you're going to be the new face of my promotion. Here you go. Now it's on you to
Hmm.
take that and help you become
Yeah,
the
you
face
have
of the
to be able
company.
to
And
run with that for sure. Yeah,
right.
like you
So
know, the classic example of could it have been somebody else? I don't think so. I think he was the
no,
right guy at the right time with the
yes,
right look, massively appealing for the era, you know. So it kind of had to be him. I don't know that there was another choice. And if you did put somebody else in, things would have been drastically different. There's just no question about that.
right.
Um,
But
and
but
that would
but
probably
I'm
still be the
glad you
same case.
right. But I'm glad you brought up history a little while ago because we're gonna
Oh God,
I'm trying to trying to let
what did I get wrong? I'm
producer
like a
Steve.
mountain of misinformation.
That's all right. You might get this one though because I'm trying to make the promise to producer Steve that we would keep this to an hour and a half. So we're gonna try our
Yeah,
best. But
I don't have so many
what if,
grievances tonight. We can call this
no,
one, grocery store escapades, and Howard gets his ass kicked by sour milk. You know.
right. So yeah, and it's not even today's date, it's tomorrow's date. So
Okay.
November 26th, we got, we're gonna fast
Okay.
forward a little bit to go back. November 26th, 1987.
Yeah.
What is significant about that date?
November
Does that ring a bell to
26th,
you?
87. I was there. I don't know. I was alive. Um,
So I
so
was alive as well.
it would have been probably a Starcade being in the middle of the week, but
You're
87
you're
would have
you're
been
you're you're you're
Night of
warm.
Skywalkers. I don't know.
That's
Did you hear me? I'm so wrong. Like I was like Night of the
well.
Skywalkers,
I'm
87.
I'm not
What?
going to say you're wrong because that's not where I'm headed. But November
Oh,
26th, 1987,
okay.
21,300 people jammed into the Richfield Coliseum in
Okay.
Richfield Township, Ohio, for the inaugural Survivor Series.
Oh, a Survivor Series. That's right, because they used to run that on. It wasn't a Saturday either. That's right.
Yeah,
Wow, I
they used
forgot
to run
about
them
that.
on Thanksgiving Day, and the deal
Uh huh.
was that what Vince McMahon did, and you can question his morals and all you want and his scruples. but he told the cable companies, if you allow Starrcade to be broadcast the same night, you will not get, I think it was WrestleMania 4, I think at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, WrestleMania 4. Because this tagline for this Survivor Series is, where I just saw it, where did it go? The biggest event since WrestleMania 3. So they were putting a lot of
So they were
hype
building
and
that.
backing
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Into the supercars.
and we know that it's now become one of the core 4
I feel like I thought Survivor
pay-per-views.
Series. Here's how off I am, because I admittedly, as a kid in that era, I was only worried about the NWA as much. I watched WWF loosely, but I felt like it came along later. That's why I went with Starrcade. Yeah.
No,
Mm-hmm.
actually, no. Starrcade 87, Chi-Town Heat, November 26th, 1987.
It was.
Same night. It was the same night.
Okay.
Chi-Town
Wow.
Heat, yep. And that's where Ric Flair reclaims his title from Ronnie Garvin.
Okay.
And that was the Rock and Roll Express.
That was a weird title run for Ronnie Garvin, because I never saw Ronnie as the champion. I wouldn't have guessed that as a kid. That was a really weird, quick run for me.
Yeah, no, it was very, very short, very unexpected.
Yeah.
And I think this particular Starrcade is the one Cornette talks about blowing out his knee. Because it was or is that
scaffold match, Night of Skywalkers? Uh-huh.
Yeah, the scaffold match, and
when Bubba didn't catch him and he landed.
When Bubba didn't catch him.
Uh-huh.
But I wasn't sure if that was against the Rock and Roll Express or the Road Warriors. I want to say the Road Warriors.
It's the Road Warriors, yeah. Because it was Dennis and Bobby.
Before that, then. All right.
Yeah, that was.
So, I had
the one he blew out his knee. I believe was because they used the scaffold later with the Rock and Roll, but most of them, I think, what made its name with the Road Warriors. So Road Warriors and the Midnights. So I remember the promos when Animal would be dropping like the pumpkin off of the 20-foot scaffold.
That was great.
Yeah,
that was when they did that. I thought that was great.
8 foot. It could have been 8 foot off the ground. I'd have been scared to fall off of it. So there's that. I love that.
So here we go.
Yeah, I love that we made it through this episode without you choking. I didn't really have any grievances. I'd love to kind of get the listeners really thinking about what as consumers we do, and if you're super happy with the product, that's great, but I'm not hearing that by and large. And when I look at it, I'm not as moved by it. Like I've said it many times, like if I weren't in wrestling already, this is not a product right now watching that would make me want to be a pro wrestler. I don't know, I might watch it casually, but it wouldn't hook me like the stuff did when I was younger and even older, even getting into my 20s and 30s. I was still watching some stuff that was, it was a weird time because TV was changing things and, the regional promotions had died out. But I don't know if that system was going to work forever either. But I think that it comes back to booking and presentation. By presentation, that falls on the wrestler. Like, how are you presenting it? Like, I don't want to see you laying on the ground smiling. I don't want to see, the unbelievable sells and registering. It's usually not the registering because it's kind of natural to do. But once you're selling something after the fact, make it reasonable, make it believable, and I just, I hope that we didn't laugh at each other as much in this episode, but I think it was. What we forgot to talk about, and because we were ranting and raving about something or another last week. Who knows? But go back and check us out, folks. We always got something to say. Howard screwed something up, I'm sure.
Probably.
We did not mention the loss of Bob Caudle last week, and I thought it was really cool because. I did catch. I had the kids had a bonfire on Friday night, and I made it back late, but I got to see some of SmackDown, and Michael Cole, I believe it was Michael Cole, he did bring him up, and he did talk about like some of his exploits in the NWA. So it was really cool
Good.
the way they at least integrated him in, because I think the one thing that if you haven't checked it out too, folks, over on the VOC Nation, we had a really good interview. What was it, a week ago? A week or two ago with the East Coast Wrestling Association, ECWA, announcers Brady Hicks and Will Strauss. And
Yes,
when
it was
you
2 weeks
hear
ago. Yes.
an announcer talk about it from their perspective, that's really cool. Like that's a whole different
Yes.
ball of wax. Like everybody's got a different perspective. Like, you know who we got to get? We got to get a cameraman too, because I'd love to hear it from somebody who's filming it. We've had
Yeah.
bookers on, we've had owners, we've had now we've had announced staff, we've had Shine Ortiz, the president. So we talk about his role, which is some of that to shoot, some of it is figurehead, but he's very good at what he does. So we've had all these different people that had different roles and promotions, but we've not had a cameraman yet. We should get
I
Steve
want to
on
work on
here.
getting a
Steve's,
cameraman and
you know,
a referee. I'm working on getting a
yeah.
referee on. I do want to
Oh,
get a
we got.
cameraman on as well.
Well, wait, you got a referee right here, because if it were up to me, I already tried to disqualify Aiden Chambers
We,
and Sean Royal
right.
a couple months
We've
back.
already gone down that road, and the miscarriage of justice that happened at the
But yeah,
ECWA Night of
a
Unusual
full
Matches.
time referee would be cool, because you got to hear the perspective from them, because
Yes. Yes, I
I've
want to
done it
hear their
myself,
perspective.
but
I'm
I
working
would
on
be
2 of them.
interested to hear. I'd be interested to hear more about it, because I can't say that I've had any. Traveled with a lot of referees. I trained a few. I trained with a few, and we just never really talked about things other than like life or
Right.
wrestling business in general. It's never been their direct perspective. Like, you always hear me preaching how the only thing in wrestling is that a shoot should be that 3 count or that 10 count, whatever a referee's
Right.
counting should be a shoot. Like, and again, you can't really. Here's the thing. Remember, I told you, you can stretch that 10 count out, which is what she was
Yes.
trying to do last night. The problem is that she was counting at a good cadence until 9, and he was nowhere to be found. So
Right.
that
If
was
she slowed
not
down
in
around
my.
6, 5 or
Well,
6, I could have bought that, but she didn't.
yeah, but she was waiting on him. I would have. What do you do? I mean, does she get in trouble if she counts to 10? I don't know. Do they ring
I
him
don't
out?
know.
Because I don't give a. I'll be honest. I'm going to be very blunt. I don't give a shit who he is. He should have. Somebody should say something to him. That was
Yes.
not cool. And I know
Yes.
from being a wrestler that I don't put that on her. But would she have gotten in trouble if she counted the 10 and counted him out? Because now she's ruined plans. She's changed plans.
Right.
But again,
Right.
we tell the referees, when you count the 3. If we get pinned, that is on us. We will take the heat from whoever is going to give us. We are in trouble for that.
Right.
That's
Should be the
I've
same
never
way with
heard
the 10
anything
count,
different
though. I
than that.
mean, right.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't know. I don't work there. I don't know what they're being told. I don't know what the direction is. I don't know if they're telling referees, "Hey, if you screw this up, it's on you, because we're not going to yell at our talent." No, you should be yelling at the talent.
No, you should
100%,
be
you
yelling at
should
your
be yelling
talent.
at the talent.
That's where it
When
should start.
you should yell at you should admonish a referee legitimately when they've made the mistake. But it was apparent to
Yes.
me that was not her mistake. She was
No.
just counting at a decent clip until she gets to 9, and he's nowhere to be found. Not her problem.
Right.
Seriously,
Not her problem.
Likewise, it's not a referee. This is why I want to talk to a referee. This is good, because it's not their problem if I don't get my shoulder up.
Right.
It's just not. I mean, it never has been. I don't know anybody, any referee. That's why that's why we got to talk to one. We got to talk to somebody who's done it.
I want to hear it firsthand from them. What would they do in that situation? But Mozart, as
I
we
just
wrap
know what
this
I've
thing up.
always been. Yeah. I just know
No,
it's
no,
always been. What's that?
No, go ahead. I cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I always know that I was always trained to get my shoulder up, or it's my problem. I
Right.
then have to explain to the booker, the promoter, why I got pinned when I was not supposed to. You know what I mean? It's part of
Right.
working. I mean, you're working, you're doing a job. It's no different than going to your job or my day job and not performing a task and then expecting my boss not to ask me why it wasn't performed like it should have been, you know? And if there's a reasonable
Yeah.
explanation, it might be like, all right, okay, you got your bell rung. Understandable. We can work around this. I mean, that's probably most of the time would probably be the reaction, but shouldn't be the last thing you want is your referee making it look that phony. And if they're put in a position where they have to do that, I don't really know that it's their fault. You know.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
Now that apparently, if I'm reading, you know, if I'm, I don't know, I don't have any inside information, but according to the insiders, if you read the net, that would have changed the finish drastically.
Yes.
You know,
Yes. If
whereas
you
when we
believe the
had this,
internet,
we had
yes,
this,
that would have drastically changed it.
the one that I couldn't understand was a few months ago when I think one of the referees counted. It was a clear 3 count, and one of the was it Nia Jax? She didn't kick out, but yet
Yeah.
the same finish happened. So when you're not changing the finish, I don't understand what the problem is. This would have changed the finish, but it
Right.
shouldn't have been on her. I mean, at least apparently
No.
it would have. I don't know. I wasn't. I'm just going by what I read. But you know, hey, I'm on the outs as much as anybody here. I'm guessing too.
But Mozart,
This is
I
why
appreciate
they
it. You
don't
know,
pay me the big bucks. You know,
right,
but
right, right. But
you want to
guys,
wind
you
this
know, it's
rabbit
been
hole up,
fun.
Howard. You got to get to
Yeah,
your soup.
I got to
Howard's
get to
got
something.
soup to
I'm
eat. You got
starving here.
wait, Steve. I can't wait for it because Steve names the episodes based on the nonsense that we spew. So I can't wait to see what he calls
Yeah,
this one.
I can't wait to see what he's got for this. I just wish I
No, but
would have rattled off
the
wrestlers' names. Like we didn't
positivity.
really mention a lot of them.
What's that?
Like I said, I wish I would have rattled off a whole bunch of wrestlers' names, like Hulk Hogan, Bruno Sammartino, Ric Flair, Wahoo
Do it
McDaniel, so
now.
you can put the pictures up. So Sergeant Slaughter, the Iron Sheik, just so he could quickly
Yeah.
throw
Now
pictures
he's
up
got to
there and make
find
it
it. Now
work,
he's
and
got to find a. He's got to find a. What do they call it? He's got to make like a
like a
portfolio of
montage.
everybody. Montage. That's what I was looking for. Yeah. Exactly.
Yes,
Too many headshots here. I can't
but
remember what I'm saying. Yeah.
yes, guys, thanks for listening. And listen, if you have a way to fix the wrestling business, comment on the video.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
it's November 25th as we're recording this. It'll probably drop by Friday. So when you listen to it,
Yeah.
drop us a
I'd be
comment. Let you
interested.
know what, or maybe we're way off. But you're going to tell us, hey, you are just two
Yeah,
old bitter
I could be
guys, and
way off.
I'll
I'm
take
just
that.
looking at it from. I'm just doing what the script that Howard sent me earlier. So you can't. I had to
Right,
memorize this whole show. You know.
right. But Mozart, I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for joining me as always. And
Yeah,
remember,
man.
I'm going to try this out to see if it works. Remember, life's a work, but your rent is a shoot.
Yes, it is. Or your mortgage.
Right? Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.